Welcome aboard, everybody, here to the Open Mic program here on the Sports Talk Nation. Michael Cohen here with you. And yes, folks, I know it's been a long time since we have done this show. It's been kind of busy around here for me with work and everything else. But you know what? So much has been going down in sports. I have got so much I have to get off my chest. I can't even tell you. And joining me to help do that today is going to be a very special guest, and that's John Pielli of the Pass Ball Show. And John joins me right now. John, how you doing, man?
Hey, what's going on, Mike? Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Awesome, man, awesome. So I know that it's been a while for you because I know you told me that you just jumped on did your show as well. It's been a while for you to do a couple of shows as well. So much, man, has been going on in sports. I mean, it's been crazy from what's been going on in the NBA with LeBron going to the Lakers. It's been crazy there. You have the stuff now going on with baseball. It's been insane the last couple of weeks.
No, it has been, and it's funny. When I was doing my show before, I'm like, I don't even know where to start.
Yeah,
obviously you got the World Cup, and you got, like you did mention with the NBA, but I mean, there's so many different directions you could go into, and that's why, certainly over the next couple of weeks, I feel like I got a lot more stuff that I'm going to get off my own chest.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to start it off with the baseball, and let's kick it off with the big story, and that is the trade deadline. We still got about 19 days until the trade deadline hits, but the rumor mill is getting more and more intense. A lot of talk about Manny Machado, a lot of talk about Jacob deGrom, a lot of talk even about guys like J.A. Happ, Cole Hamels, even Zach Wheeler for that matter, who's a kind of a surprising name to see get thrown into the mix as well. But the latest headline being that Machado could be a big piece as part of a deal with the Yankees and the Orioles. And the rumors that I've read with John Heyman's Twitter account being that maybe the Yankees would be willing to give up Justice Sheffield in a possible deal with Baltimore to get Machado. To me, I don't understand why the Yankees would want to make this trade. Now, I understand Machado's a great player. I understand why they would want him, but he's a guy who's going to be a free agent next year anyway. The Yankees could go out there in December during the winter meetings and give Machado a big contract, and they can move on from there. They really don't need him right now. They have Andujar at third base, who right now is still there unless something else happens with him. And, of course, they have Didi Gregorius, who's going to be a free agent going into next year anyway. I don't know why you would want to go out there, bring in Machado now, risk losing some top prospects to a divisional rival in Baltimore, and at the same time put yourself in a position where you weaken your opportunities to get some starting pitching. It's not a deal that, right now anyway, would make sense for the Yankees in my mind.
There's part of it that doesn't seem to make sense. The only thing that I think if you're the Yankees, and the only reason that you do this is if you are 100% certain that Manny Machado is going to sign with you as a free agent. I mean, you're obviously not looking to get him for the next 2.5 months and hopefully the playoffs and then see him go over to L.A. or Washington or any other team. And obviously Manny has hinted, with A-Rod being his idol, and just like any other superstar, his dream is to play for the Yankees. I think that has played a little bit into it, a little bit more into it than any of us have been willing to admit. But for the Yankees' perspective, I'm sure Brian Cashman. He's a very frugal general manager. He's very to the point in regards to the dialogues that he has with other teams. If you look back at the Yankees' trade history over the last 10 years or so, very seldom have the Yankees parted with something that they hold in very good standing or something that they really want to keep in. So, I actually think that there's a little bit of a tug of war that's going on between the Yankees' interest in trading for Machado and giving up a player to the standards of a Justice Sheffield. It doesn't seem like it fits in with what Brian Cashman has done over the last several years. And especially when the Yankees are struggling in the back part of their rotation and are looking for starting pitching themselves, I'd be very surprised if they would part with a guy that's right at the top of their farm system. He is just about major league ready, could be contributing as early as this year, and is certainly a piece of the team's future.
Yeah, and it's not like the Yankees, as you said, need the pitching right now. Outside of Luis Severino, there's nothing but question marks. When you think about it, the second best starter on this team right now would be CC Sabathia, and CC has had a tendency to be up and down. He's had a pretty good stretch last couple of starts, but outside of that, there's nothing but question marks. Masahiro Tanaka just came off the disabled list. We're still trying to see where he is right now. Sonny Gray has been completely hit and miss, and a lot of people are very frustrated with the way Sonny Gray has pitched this year. Understandably so, with a 5.5 ERA. People are very disappointed in him. I mean, it would make more sense for the Yankees to go out there in a position they are in as being 3.5 back of the Red Sox. And look, that could change between now and the end of the season. But right now the Yankees are staring at a wild card game against the Seattle Mariners. And the Seattle's got a chance to throw either James Paxton or Felix Hernandez in that baseball game. If you're the Yankees, outside of Severino, who do you have confidence throwing in that game? CeCe, maybe. That's why I think either a DeGrom, and we'll get into that in a second, or J.A. Happ, or someone of the like, maybe a good piece to get, especially if you want to throw into that game. To me, it's all about that one game at this moment in time.
And the other thing you got to factor in too, Mike, is what if the Yankees and Red Sox come down to the last couple games of the season, which obviously, there hasn't been a whole lot of separation. In fact, you look at the 3 or so games that the Boston Red Sox are up right now. I mean, that's really been the biggest distance between the two teams all season. So it's expected to go down in a wire. Obviously, the value in winning the division, you don't have to play that one game, play-in game. I think will dictate what the Yankees' rotation is the last couple games of the season. I mean, if they have to start a Severino perhaps on the last game or the second to last game of the season with hope still alive that they could win the division, then obviously you got to ask yourself, who are they going to pitch if they end up in that wild card game? And listen, I look at Sonny Gray and I think that what he was about 3-4 years ago, I'm not sure is ever going to come back. And I'll admit that I was wrong. When the Yankees made a trade for him last year, I thought they got market value for him. I thought this was a guy that has some postseason experience. I know he was battling an injury over the last couple seasons, but his biggest issue obviously has been handling New York. He's got that Ed Whitson syndrome. Some players they could succeed in other markets and they come to New York and they just don't seem to have it. So because of this, the Yankees are in need for, at the very least, a serviceable 3-starter. I mean, if they consider Tanaka, a 2A, a Sabathia, a 3, they would want to have another pitcher that they could trust in that type of spot.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely right. And they're going to see the Red Sox 6 times within the last week of the regular season. So they're going to need to be matched up perfectly with the Red Sox as far as starting pitching is concerned. And right now, you have to give Boston a slight edge. And I know that a couple weeks ago the Yankees took 2 out of 3 against Boston at Yankee Stadium. It's really both teams, in my mind, could use another starting pitcher. I would not be shocked that the Red Sox jump into the market here for someone like a J.A. Happ. I just saw something on Twitter earlier about the Red Sox maybe Happ being a part of that. Who knows? We'll see. But both of these teams are in my mind in an arms race here, going towards that second half of the season. Because again, like we said, it's all about the last week and a half of the season and trying to avoid that wild card game against the most likely Seattle.
Yeah, and I tell you, it comes down to that one starting pitcher that you have starting in that right spot. So, it's interesting the way the Yankees could go because, if they ended up getting themselves a Happ or got themselves a Hamels, I wouldn't be as against it as maybe I was a couple weeks ago thinking about it. I think when it comes down to one game, you look at the track record of a J. Happ, who's pitched very well against the Red Sox. Cole Hamels obviously has not been anywhere near what he was, let's say, 10 years ago, but has postseason experience and kind of has proven that he could stand up to the bright lights when the game's on the line. So if I look at either one of those two, I don't see them as bad of a fit for the Yankees as I did perhaps a couple weeks ago.
I'll say this: I understand where the Yankee fan I've spoken to, a few of them have been nervous about the idea of Cole Hamels, only because he has gotten lit up at times this year. I mean, his last start against Detroit, he gave up 7 runs, so he hasn't pitched all that well all the time this year. He's been inconsistent. J.A. Happ has had a really nice year. Last couple of starts haven't been that great, but overall, against good teams, he's pitched well. He is a guy that has always been kind of under the radar throughout his career. Whenever I think of J.A. Happ, I think of that guy who was just kind of an in-between starter and reliever of the Phillies many years ago. But you look throughout his career, this was a guy who was a 20-game winner just 2 years ago. So if the Yankees or the Red Sox or whoever in this pennant race finds a way to get him out of Toronto, that would be a huge boon. Now the question is going to be, what do teams have to give up to get one of these guys? If you're the Yankees, you're dealing with Toronto for J.A. Happ. You're giving up an Andahar, who has been linked to so many trades. I know the Yankee fans don't want to get rid of him, but he may have to be included in a deal. Justice Sheffield obviously is going to be included in any kind of deal. So if you are the Yankees, you're going to have to give up something to get someone, even if it is J.A. Happ, who isn't a big-time star.
No, very true. And you look at both Hamels and Happ were actually teammates on the 2008 World Series championship team. Mm-hmm. They both pitched against the Yankees in a World Series when the Yankees won in 2009. So, I mean, if you look at their numbers, they both thrown the ball well. Obviously, your issue with Hamels is well understood. But my concern with Cole Hamels would be, how much motivation does he have to pitch in Texas? That team has been an absolute disaster. Now, it doesn't excuse maybe not giving your best effort, and I don't know if that is the case. I mean, Hamels is getting up there in age. Obviously, he's been in the game for well more than 10 years. So I look at it and I say, hey, does Hamels, if he goes to a place like New York and has a chance to pitch in the postseason, do you see a different Cole Hamels than you're seeing right now pitching for an absolutely horrendous last-place Texas Rangers team?
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I mean, I can certainly understand that. I mean, we see it all the time where players get disgruntled in one location, they get traded, and all of a sudden they just turn it on to a different level. It happens in every sport all the time.
I don't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
If you even think of Justin Verlander last year,
mm-hmm.
I mean, nobody was really looking at Verlander being the piece he ended up being. Obviously, he has the track record. You look at the postseason experience, the Cy Youngs, the whole thing. But when the proposal was to see him traded, the talk was about how much money were the Tigers going to eat off the contract. He was not necessarily having one of his best years. All of a sudden, he puts on a Houston Astros uniform, and he's jumping in a time machine for at least 5 or so years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Justin Verlander probably after he started to pitch for the Houston Astros, probably never pitched a better stretch for the last 2.5 months of the season.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing can happen with a Cole Hamels. I guess it depends on his motivation, but also what he has left.
Look at Jonas Cespedes a couple of years ago. Jonas Cespedes was just struggling coming when he got picked up by the Mets, and then turned it on big time in 2015 down the stretch. Had a terrific second half of the year. It was a big reason why the Mets got into the playoffs. Maybe the reason why the Mets got into the playoffs that year. So we see it all the time. Gary Sheffield, another guy who 1998 was really struggling with the Marlins. They ended up trading him. Of course, the Marlins were having a big fire sale. What a surprise back then in 98. He goes to the Dodgers and then just turns into a Hall of Fame player in Los Angeles. So it's amazing what happens to these guys when they get traded from a bad team to a good team.
Now, and Hamels has done it before, too.
Yeah.
When he was traded in 2015 from the Phillies to the Rangers, he went 7-1 in 12 starts towards the end of the season. Now, obviously, the Rangers didn't make it to the World Series that year, but they battled a tough Toronto Blue Jays team in the ALDS, and Hamels certainly was not much of a fault of the way they performed that series. So, he's done it before, being traded from the Phillies to the Rangers, and I would expect to see the very best of Cole Hamels wherever he's traded, as long as he's into a pennant race.
Where do you think some of these guys are going to go? I mean, I know we still got 19 days. This thing's going to change a lot over these next 2.5 weeks. If you had to guess, where do you think some of these guys are going to end up, like a Machado or even a Cole Hamels, for that matter?
Well, I think what's different this year as opposed to other years, Mike, is the fact that I think teams that have these type of players have more options. In other words, when you have a good starting pitcher or a very good impact position player, that you put them on the market, there's going to be a bunch of teams that are going to be calling. This isn't dialogue between, let's say, the Yankees and the Marlins for Giancarlo Stanton after he decided he didn't want to play for San Francisco or St. Louis. This is, let's say, Manny Machado and the Baltimore Orioles pretty much knowing that they could trade him by this trading deadline and get some value for him. That's what they've decided to do. So they may be negotiating with the Yankees, but they could also negotiate with the Dodgers, maybe the Cubs, maybe any other team that would be interested in making a push for Manny Machado, the Milwaukee Brewers. So I think it's different this year that there's a lot more options for the very few pieces. Because if you remember last year and I'm trying to remember what year it was. It was the year that David Price ended up getting traded to, I think it was Toronto from Detroit. And there was that ridiculous trading deadline where John Lester was traded or something about 15 or 16 trades made on the deadline day. There doesn't seem to be that depth in regards to the amount of players that teams would be interested in moving. And I think because of that could push the time that a lot of these trades are made to be really the last day before the trading deadline or the trading deadline itself.
A couple of names that have not been mentioned much at all, and I think they need to be mentioned because I look at these two teams as two of the biggest disappointments in Major League Baseball. I think you can kind of guess where I'm going here, and that's with the Anaheim Angels and the Washington Nationals. And wouldn't it be something if somehow the Angels, who it seems like year in, year out, are just a major disappointment every year, and this year probably the biggest one of them all. I mean, you have Mike Trout, who's one of the best players, if not in the minds of a lot of people, the best player in baseball, having another stellar year. He's got the 25 home runs, 50 RBIs. He's well on his way to certainly a 40 home run season. What if somebody goes out there and says, hey, we want to get Mike Trout? I mean, he's an East Coast guy. I'm not going to say the Phillies are going to do this, but, you got a team like Philadelphia. They would love to get someone like this on their team. I mean, I just think a change of scenery for him to be in a pennant race. I mean, this is a guy who's appeared in a wild card game in his entire career. I would love to see Mike Trout in a playoff series, in a long 7-game series. We haven't seen that yet.
Now, listen, I've discussed this, and I've taken a different kind of take on this. Mm-hmm. My issue with the potential of a deal of a player to Mike Trout's stature is that I don't think there are very many teams that have what it takes to get the best player in baseball right now. The player that has been the best player in baseball for the past 3 to 5 years, and the player that's expected to be the best player in baseball for the next 3 years. If I'm the Angels, I'm not willing to flip him for a couple quote-unquote top prospects and a couple middlers. I'm looking to rate a team. Yeah. So, and I made a suggestion, hey, if the Dodgers want Mike Trout, for instance, hey, how about giving up Corey Seager and Cody Bellinger and a couple pitchers and a couple of your top prospects?
That's what's going to take.
All of a sudden, that puts a different look on something that you would say, hey, a top player just getting dumped for prospects. If you're going to make a deal for a player like a Mike Trout or somebody on that level, you're going to have to give up a core of your roster. Or let's say, and I hate to go crazy, but hypothetical with the Yankees, if they wanted a Max Scherzer from Washington, yeah, maybe the Nationals might be willing to do it, but it might cost you Aaron Judge. It might cost you Luis Severino. So if you want to speak those things as far as being possibilities, you got to be willing to pay the price it's going to cost to get players of that echelon.
And another guy I'd consider here as well is going to be Harper, because the Nationals keep falling out of this thing. They're at 500 right now. Now they get the Mets this weekend, and I expect Washington to do well this weekend and kind of keep themselves in the mix. But they have been free-falling for a while now. They're at 500. You got Harper, who's going to be a free agent. It would logically make sense for them to go ahead and shop him and try to get some prospects for him. But again, it's another situation where you could see the Nationals go out there, if they were indeed shopping Harper, and raid somebody's farm system, if not even their roster, to try to just dump Bryce Harper for the rest of the season.
Yeah, and I think he is maybe one of the exceptions because of the year he's having. I mean, he's a free agent at the end of the year. He's only hitting 213. Obviously, it's a guy that if you look at his stats, I mean, he had a very good year last year in 2017, his MVP season of 2015 notwithstanding. He's a guy with a ridiculous amount of talent, but has not blossomed into a consistent star. And obviously, he's only 25 years old right now, so his best days are probably coming. But if you're the Nationals, I would at least be open-minded to a team that maybe saying, hey, I could give you a couple pieces, some things that you think you may be able to use down the road. The only thing that makes me think that maybe the Nationals may not be looking to trade Bryce Harper is I don't know his relationship with the ownership there. I don't know his relationship with Mike Rizzo. And I don't know what the Washington Nationals play in the offseason is going to be to retain him. Obviously, he's got Boris as the agent. He's not open to an extension. You understand the way that's going to work out. But, perhaps it's been misreported on what the relationship is between Bryce Harper and the Nationals. And I wouldn't rule out, because of that, the possibility of Harper re-signing with Washington once the offseason comes.
That would be amazing if he did it. I mean, I think it's I think it was kind of somewhat unlikely, but the market is certainly going to change. The fact that the Yankees went out there and acquired Giancarlo Stanton last winter, on top of whatever Manny Machado may go, I mean, if Machado goes to the Yankees, if he goes to, let's say, the Dodgers or what have you, that's going to have a big impact on Bryce Harper and where he decides to go ultimately. A lot of people have connected him to the Cubs, but do the Cubs really want to spend that amount of money? I mean, they have enough talent as it is to begin with. Do they really want to spend that kind of money to bring in a Bryce Harper, who, again, is struggling this year at hitting .213? I don't know. Do the Cubs have that kind of money to pay Bryce Harper? I have no idea. So, it could end up being a situation where he may try to go everywhere, or he may just watch all of his options just dry up right in front of his face, and he may have nowhere else to go other than just going back to Washington on a short deal. We see that happen all the time. Look what happened last winter with a guy like a Mike Moustakas, who thought he was going to get a big contract, didn't get it, ended up having to take a one-year deal, basically a sabbatical just to get through this year in hopes of a better deal next year.
Yeah, and I tell you, I look at Jake Arrieta too. I know he ended up getting paid, $75 million over 3 years with the Phillies, but the Cubs ended up kind of walking away from Arrieta because of his demands at the beginning of last offseason. He was looking for a 7 or 8 year deal, paying him about $30 million a season. And because of that, the Cubs kind of pivoted and said, listen, Yu Darvish is going to be a little more affordable. And then they could sign themselves a Tyler Chatwood or an Alex Cobb, which, by the way, Cobb's been awful for Baltimore, and Chatwood's, arguably been worse for the Cubs. You can't throw the ball over the plate. That's neither here nor there. But,
right.
Looking at, a situation like Arrieta, who didn't get that big deal he was expecting to get, perhaps the same might happen with Harper. What do the Yankees want to do? Not every single star player is going to play for the Yankees, unfortunately. There's just not enough room in their lineup. There's not enough room for Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton and, perhaps Manny Machado and Bryce Harper. It's just going to be hard to put that together. And I think hard financially for the Yankees, who have done a pretty good job of staying under the luxury tax, to throw a total of about $60 million at both of those players. Now, would it shock you if the Yankees ended up doing that? No.
Nope.
But I think they've kind of changed. They may invest in one of those players, but that's going to leave the other player that doesn't sign with the Yankees in a tough spot. Is Los Angeles going to, be as persistent for one or both of these players? Like you said, the Cubs, they don't really need to make that kind of move. They may, but how many other teams are going to be throwing hundreds of millions of dollars at either one of these players? I think you're looking at the Yankees and the Dodgers, and if for some reason one of those teams doesn't sign one of those players, that player that's not signed is going to have a hard time getting the kind of deal they're looking for.
Not to mention there's a little bit of mystique around Machado compared to Harper. And when I say by mystique being the fact that we've never seen Machado in the postseason. Aside from all-star appearances, he hasn't really been on the national stage really until this year, with all the attention on him being a trade piece. Well, we've seen what Harper has done in the postseason. It has been really substantially good. It's a lot of bad. And a lot of people may sit there and say, do you really want to bring this guy into a big market where the expectations are very high? Do you want him on a team where he's the guy? Is he a guy that needs to be one of many pieces? So all those things have to be considered, not just by Harper himself, but also by whatever team tries to bring him in.
No, very true. And I'll tell you, I look at it from this perspective, because I think these players, for many years, are kind of part of the same brethren. And one player is looking to get a big contract to substantiate what the other players before him have done. But they're also doing it for the next series of players that are going to become free agents. We've spent a lot of time talking about the market, how it's changed this particular offseason, being as dry as it was, and as many major league caliber players that were without jobs as spring training started. So it's going to be interesting to see, because this is different this year. There wasn't a Bryce Harper. There wasn't a Manny Machado last offseason. There were some very good players, but were not players that are up at the level of a Machado and a Harper. I think this could be a turning point in free agency, if you think about it this way, because if either Machado or Harper doesn't get that mega deal, or has to settle for, let's say, a 4-year deal for $100 to $120 million, which we all understand is still a lot of money, but at the same time is a big shot against the star players being compensated the way they were in the past. So this could very well be a turning point this offseason of how free agency is handled going forward.
Absolutely. Moving right along, folks. Michael Cohen along with John Pielli here on the Sports Talk Nation. All right, folks, that's part one of our show here on the Open Mic program, Sports Talk Nation. As we were talking about the trade deadline, I will come back episode 2. Click the link below for the second part where we talk about the mess that is the New York Mets. Remember, you can follow us here on the social media, facebook.com/OpenMicProgram, on Twitter, @OpenMicNJ on Twitter, and of course, like, subscribe right here on the Sports Talk Nation, right here on YouTube. We're back, folks.